Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of Allah, and we send peace and blessings upon His noble and best of creation and final messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This will be the fifth of the 5 sessions that we began shortly after the shelter in place started here. And we were talking about preparing for Ramadan and also coping with the coronavirus and how we can make the best of the situation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. What I want to do with this session, especially because this is the last session and we're going to take a break from these Monday night sessions for Ramadan, and there's still going to be programming at MCC. It's going to be shifted a little bit. You can check the website and the Facebook page to keep up to date on what the sessions are. But what I wanted to do with this session was kind of wrap everything that I've been discussing in terms of coping with coronavirus and then how we can now prepare for Ramadan. So in the first sessions, I talked about the idea of turning our houses into a monastery, which is something that we should be doing anytime. And this is taken from a hadith of one of the great companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and all of his companions are great. Radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. May Allah be pleased with all of them and is pleased with all of them. The saying of Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu, where he said, "Ni'ma sawma'atul mu'mini baytuhu." How wonderful is the monastery of a believer, his or her house. And so we were discussing the idea of how to turn our houses into monasteries, really making, the old saying of make our houses a home. And it's also making your house a home to prepare for the akhirah, for the next life, using this abode, this house, for building your next house. And so we discussed that, and I discussed the idea of once you're in a monastery, one of the things that you'll find is that you can keep a regular routine. And then once you have a regular routine, excuse me, you're able to isolate the variables of your life. So you can see, how is it that I'm spending my time? How is it that I'm dealing with other people? How am I talking to other people? How are my emotions? What is my connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How am I praying my 5 daily prayers? Am I praying my 5 daily prayers? Am I praying them on time? Am I praying them at the beginning of time? Do I have presence in my prayer? Do I make each prayer better than the previous one? All of those things. And also the idea of service and serving others. And then in the next week, I talked about the idea of making connections, using this time in isolation, even though we're distanced physically, to come closer together with the blessings of that Allah has given us, such as the internet, such as this, my coming closer together with my family. So how to do that. I also talked about the idea of behavior change. The idea of behavior change and how the model of the 6 M's, and you can look in the video feeds of MCC's YouTube website to look at that, the model of behavior change that's from a traditional Muslim aspect, setting goals, observing yourself, taking yourself to account, and so forth. And then last week, I talked about the idea of making sure that once we get through this, that whatever we've gained during this time, that we're going to carry on with that we should be gaining something, and we're turning in to Allah in true, sincere dua during this time to help ourselves, our families, to protect ourselves and our families, and then also humanity as well. So what I wanted to do today is kind of wrap up everything and say, now, how do we take all of these lessons that we've been thinking about during this time in isolation and move forward with those during Ramadan? So when I presented the idea of the 6 M's, the musharata, the goal setting at the beginning of the day, the mujahada, the struggle against yourself to make sure that you're maintaining those goals, the muhasaba at the end of the day, self-accounting to see whether or not you hit the goals. Do they need to be adjusted, or do you need to reprimand yourself? If we set a goal too high, well, let's be a little bit more realistic. Or if we set it too low, let's challenge ourselves a little bit. So that process of muhasaba and, giving yourself a pat on the shoulder or a reward, so to speak, if you do something good, or if you fell short of the goals, hold something back, reprimand yourself. and to not be in despair. We talked about those two ideas of not being not being in despair of of the mercy of Allah and the forgiveness of Allah. Okay, so now we're approaching Ramadan. It's going to be towards the end of this week. We're going to start based on the moon sighting, or for those who follow calculations, they already know when they're starting. And then once we get into the month, now you know how it is. Ramadan is you get into the routine, and pretty soon the month is gone. So we want to prepare ahead of time. So a couple of things. You know, one of the things that I've heard a lot of Muslim scholars and teachers say is that it's really important to prepare for Ramadan ahead of time, because once Ramadan hits, you want to be able to maximize your time. You don't want to be spending all of your time in Ramadan Eid shopping or grocery shopping or preparing food. Now, in this day and age, I mean, in our current situation of being in isolation, we don't really have the problem of too much shopping. But nonetheless, we still have to do our grocery shopping. So help your family plan out meals for the month and go ahead and start the shopping this week. Get it done this week so that during Ramadan, you don't have to do the major trips. You just have to do a few trips here and there. Part of that is going to be planning out the month, figuring out what is it you're going to eat, and then make sure that it's not a month of feasting. I remember growing up, and maybe I was in junior high or high school, or it might have been at the beginning of my college years when I was at community college here in Fremont at Ohlone College. So shout out to Ohlone College and all the alumni, whoever's here from that, or just anybody who goes to the community college system in California. It's a great system to study in. But I remember on the news right at the beginning of Ramadan, they made an announcement on local news. And for people growing up here, and even if they haven't grown up here, it's nice to see that recognition of Muslims in our faith, that, oh, you guys are part of our society. So here, we're going to recognize you. Just like there's recognition for the Christians on their holidays, the Jewish people on their holidays, the Buddhists on their holidays, the Hindus on their holidays. Well, we're part of the fabric of this society as well. And so we get some recognition as well. So they announced Ramadan, and then they said, this is a month of feasts, a month of feasts. Now, I don't know which Muslim that they spoke with that presented Ramadan in that way, but since then I've thought of a saying that Ramadan is a month of fasting, not a month of feasting. And some people, unfortunately, turn it into this marathon of like, let me get through the day and then just eat all this food at iftar time, eat all this food at suhoor time, and then get through the rest of the day. And if we look at the example of the companions of the Prophet, the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, their overall food intake during Ramadan would actually go down. Seems kind of counterintuitive. Like, you fasted all day, at least it should be maintained normal, like we shift the food intake to the nighttime. But somebody might say, well, you actually have to, well, you want to store up extra energy, so maybe your food would go up. Well, the Sahaba and the early generations, their overall food would go down because they weren't looking at it as a month of fasting. They weren't looking at it as a marathon. They were saying, okay, I'm going to break my fast and I'm going to have a good meal and eat something that'll give me energy to get through the day, but I'm not going to turn it into this month of feasting. And overall, the imports and exports of food items in the Muslim world during Ramadan go up. That's when all they save certain television shows for Ramadan in the Muslim world. They have all these sweets and foods and so forth. And that's not the state that we want to be. We don't want to turn it into a month of feasting. We want to turn it into a month of fasting. So that's one goal we can set. That we're not going to say, oh, we don't want to eat anything, or we're just going to eat, dry bread and water. No, that's not what we're saying. Enjoy the meals. Have something fulfilling. But don't make it this huge feast, because there's a lot of shopping time to prepare those feasts, cooking time, and people should not be in the kitchen hours and hours and hours for one meal when the daytime should be spent in ibadah, worship, reflections, dhikr, so forth. Plus, we have, for those in school, it's still school year. And for those working, you still have to work. So we have to balance all of these things. We also want to take it easy on our moms, and on, for those who are married, for your wife, you want to take it easy and not put these demands. Simple meals, simple to prepare, simple to shop for. That's a good goal. Let me be better at my food preparation this year than last year. And this is an overarching theme. Earlier this week, there was a program, and it might be on their website, NCIC, Northern California Islamic Council, and there was a panel on how to prepare for Ramadan, and the title of the whole program was "Make This the Best Ramadan Ever." And one of the other panelists, Sheikh Alauddin al-Bakri, who sometimes speaks at MCC, so anybody from the community or the Bay Area in general knows him, mashallah, a wonderful teacher, and so he was sharing that this was the exact lesson that one of his teachers would share with him and other students, that every Ramadan, make the intention, this is going to be my best Ramadan ever. So that's the top goal, best Ramadan ever. Now, how am I going to reach that goal? Let's talk about the things. And he mentioned a very good point. He said, actually gather your family together at the table and say, and make a group, what is the word? A group agreement that, look, guys, we're going to do whatever we can to help each other and to remind each other to make this our best Ramadan ever. And that really should be the way we're looking at life in general. Today should be the best day ever. Don't wait for the future, because you don't know what the future holds. And don't worry about the past, because it's already gone. You can't change it. Be in the moment. Be present. Like the Latin saying, carpe diem, seize the moment. Or sometimes they say seize the day. Seize the moment. So that moment that you have, this is all you have. What's past is gone. Which future is unknown. You have this moment. So make this prayer. When you approach a prayer, we just prayed Maghrib. If you're going to pray, once you pray Isha, take a few moments to think, it's going to be my best Isha ever. And then if you do that every time, there'll be the slow incremental increase. So let's make this our best Ramadan ever. So food preparation. We're not going to make it a month of feasting. It's going to be a month of fasting. Simple food, simple meals, simple shopping, planning ahead, simple preparation, and don't overeat. All right. And now also, so that's for the meals. Make sure you try your best to get up in the morning for suhoor. During the first few days, especially as people are getting used to the fast, they're more encouraged to get up for suhoor. But by the middle, and definitely by the second, third of Ramadan, there's kind of this decreased motivation that I found with people in terms of getting up for suhoor. And the benefit of the suhoor is twofold. One is physical. You want to have some food in your body so that you can that energy can be extended through a little bit longer than, say, your last thing that you eat is 11 or 12 or 10 or 11 or 12 at night, and then you go to sleep, then you have to fast the whole day. You want to space that out. So there's a physical benefit, but there's also a spiritual benefit. And the spiritual benefit is that and this is actually our primary reason why we get up for suhoor, because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it. And that's what we want to do. We want to follow his way. And so when we get up for the suhoor, there's the spiritual benefit of following him. And he told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, do the suhoor because there's barakah, there's blessing in that. Not only in the food, but just in getting up at that time and following his example. So there's blessing that we can see. So Ramadan is not just about not eating. That's not what it is. There's other foods. That not eating is the base. It's the foundation that we're going to get all these other benefits from. So at each point, the extra prayers, the extra Quran recitation, or listening to the Quran, or studying the Quran, we're going to do all of those different things. It's like the people who are business-minded people. They'll say, diversify your interests. Like if you're going to invest, don't put all of your money into one investment, because if that investment goes down, you lose everything. So invest over here, here, and you diversify your interest of where you're investing. The same thing is in terms of our ibadah. We want to give focus to the fast. That's the primary worship in Ramadan. But we also want to give focus to the prayer and to the Quran recitation and to those sunnahs that are there throughout the day, such as getting up at the end of the night to take part in the suhoor. Even if it's just get up, you grab a cup of water, or maybe have a cup of water next to your bed, a water bottle. Make sure you're watching the clock, and take a few sips of water, maybe a date, a bar, energy bar, and that can be your suhoor. All right, but to get back to the idea of the goal, we say the Ramadan is going to be the best Ramadan ever. We're going to take it simple on the meals. We're going to try our best to get all of the sunnahs of the month. So those are pretty set in terms of what are the sunnahs of Ramadan. Well, of course, it's fasting in the daytime, which is an obligation actually, but it is in essence the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But another sunnah is praying Taraweeh, and I know this question is coming up in the minds of a lot of people on, well, what do we do for Taraweeh? Do we follow the TV or the imam or the live feed from our imams, or do we just pray on our own? And I don't want to get into a legal discussion and a fiqh discussion on whether or not it's valid to follow an imam online, because there are a lot of scholars who say that it's not valid. You have to be in the proximity nearby the imam. There's others who are making the argument, and these fatwas are online, that it's permissible. But what I would like to remind you is that the sunnah is to pray at night, whether it's by yourself, whether it's in a group, whether or not you recite the whole Quran, whether or not you're in the masjid or you're at home. Right now, we don't really have the option of the masjid, but what you should set and what I should set for myself is as at a bare minimum that every night, in addition to our 5 daily prayers and the sunnah or nafila prayers that we put before and after those prayers, like for Fajr, it's 2 rak'ahs dhuhr. So let's actually start there with the fard prayer. One of the things that we see in our communities is sometimes people give more importance to fasting than they do to prayer. And there's some cultures where you'll see a lot of almost everybody fast, but very few people pray, or it's more common for people to forget the prayer, but they'll never fast. They'll never break their fast. Sorry. It's like, no, I make sure to fast every single Ramadan. And that's great. That's praiseworthy. But it shouldn't cause a person to say, oh, I'm a great Muslim because I fast every single Ramadan and I've never missed a day and I've done it since I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. But then you ask them about prayer, say, I'm working on it. Well, just as we are giving importance to the fast, we should also give importance to the prayer. So that's a great goal. If you're not praying 5 times a day, and this is 5 times with all of the proper conditions, proper wudu, standing up, all of those things, standing up for those who are able, of course, praying 5 times a day on time and in the time. If we're not doing that, that should be a goal in Ramadan. All right, by the end of Ramadan, 30 days, I'm going to pray every prayer during Ramadan. And so that by the end of Ramadan, I've given myself a time to really be motivated. And now, especially with the self-isolation, we don't really have the commutes that we've been doing. We don't have the school commutes. You don't have to get up in the morning. Now you have to get up in the morning and tune in online or do your work remotely. But people are working remotely, studying remotely. So there's no commute times. So there's no reason that somebody might say, oh, I'm at school and I can't find a place to pray, or I am at work and it's not easy to do wudu, and I don't like sticking my foot in the sink, and all of the excuses that we hear of why we can't pray. Well, those excuses are gone. So give yourself a goal of making sure that you get all 5 prayers. If you're praying all 5 prayers, but sometimes you miss them and you make them up at the end of the day, people are busy during the day and say, oh, I'll make up dhuhr and asr when I get home at nighttime. Well, that's a habit that needs to change, because it's not permissible for us to delay the prayers. So that's your goal. If you're praying the prayers and you're praying them on time, but you're rushing through them, the goal is, all right, let me do them at least with focus. They're on time. You're doing them. You got focus. Are you doing the sunnah prayers before and after? Let's add that as a goal. If you're doing all of those things, all right, well, let me just add some things. Let me make sure there's extra sunnahs, whatever it might be. So review the prayer and some of the sunnahs of the prayer and do a checklist. What am I missing? And now I can use Ramadan to try to bring those back into my life. All right, so we have the fasting during the day. We have the 5 daily prayers, which are much more important than any extra prayers. But it's also a sunnah for us to give some focus and time to praying at night. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whoever fasts the day and he prays during the night, during Ramadan, imanan wa ihtisaban, with full conviction and faith, Not just doing it because, oh, why are you fasting? Oh, because my people fast, or I'm out of culture. No, with faith. We believe in Allah. He told us to fast. We fast. That's why we're doing it. Imanan wa ihtisaban, and with a hisab, also doing ihtisab, like self accounting, that auditing, the muhasaba that I was talking about. If he does that, then Allah will forgive all of his sins. That's a great goal to aim for, that you can get through Ramadan and Allah can forgive all of your sins. When do we get a chance like that? So prayer at night. This is the Taraweeh prayer, the Sunnah prayers of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He, during Ramadan one year, he started praying after Isha prayer. He started praying some extra prayers. And the first night, a small group of people, they had never seen this before, so they came around. The second night, more people had come. By the third night, the masjid was packed because they want to follow the Sunnah. They say, oh, he's doing something new. Well, when he saw that the people were praying what is the Taraweeh prayer, he went back to his home to pray it in his home, for fear that people would think that it's an obligation to pray. Now, later on, the Sahaba, all of them, decided we're going to pray in the masjid. And some of the scholars said, well, these are actually two sunnahs that we can do. You can either pray at home or you can pray at the masjid. They're both sunnahs. And that's what we have to remember. A lot of people are saying, oh, what am I going to do about Taraweeh? I can't pray at the masjid. Well, remember, there's a alternate sunnah, which is what the Prophet ﷺ did. And the sunnah that the Sahaba established is also a tradition that can be followed, but it's also to be prayed, can be prayed at home, and that's what we're giving the opportunity. So earlier when I said, there's all this discussion on, can I follow my imam online and so forth? Well, even if you do follow an imam online, you're missing the opportunity to revive the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ of praying on his own in his home with his family, just with his family. And that's what you can do. And again, it can be 2 rak'ahs, it can be 4, it can be 6, it can be 8, it can be 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 26, 28, 30. Some of the early generations, like Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, used to actually pray 36 rak'ahs. And he was he was the Khalifa, and he lived in Medina. And his reasoning was, well, hey, the Muslims over there in Mecca, they get to pray Taraweeh and they get to look at the Kaaba. And just looking at the Kaaba is its own reward. It's its own form of ibadah. In fact, there's a saying of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I see there's questions coming in right now. I'm going to definitely get to them. So please keep sending them in. But his reasoning, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said, they get to, the hadith is that there's mercy that comes down on the Kaaba every single day. And some of those mercies are for the people who do tawaf around the Kaaba, who go around the Kaaba, which is a form of worship. They get a portion of the mercies. And some of the mercies go to the people who are doing salah, praying at the Kaaba. And then there's a third category of the people who get mercy just from looking at the Kaaba. So just looking at the Kaaba, it's a form of worship. So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said, well, the Muslims in Mecca, they get to do Taraweeh and look at the Kaaba, so they get an extra reward above the prayer. So I'm going to add rak'ahs, so that we here in Medina, we get extra rewards to kind of like balance things out. And so he did that, and that's also an option. So pray during Taraweeh. Whether you're going to do 2 or more, or whatever the number is, the Prophet ﷺ would pray 8 plus shafa' and witr, so that becomes 11. The Sahaba, during the time of Umar radiallahu anhum, and all of the Sahaba got together and did this, they prayed 20 with shafa' and witr, it became 23. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz prayed 36 plus shafa' and witr, became 39. You can do anything from 2 up to 40, whatever is easy. The most important thing is that you do it and maintain consistency too. Like the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, that the best of actions are the ones without doing Taraweeh. Even, and again, you don't have to recite the extra the entire Quran. So make that an intention. Another intention, which is giving sadaqah, giving charity. So make some goals for giving charity, wherever it might be. One of the descriptions of the beloved Prophet of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was that he was the most generous of people, and he was the most generous during Ramadan. So as this month is coming up, we're getting ready to give sadaqah, to give charity, in whatever form it might be. But wealth is one of the hardest things for us to give, so we want to plan that out. And it doesn't have to be a big amount. It could be $1. There's a hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said sometimes 1 dirham, 1 silver coin, can beat out in terms of reward 1,000 silver coins, and a dirham equals about $2 in our in the current in the current equivalent currency. So he was basically saying that sometimes $2 of sadaqah is better than $2,000 of sadaqah. Whether you gave it, so maybe today you gave $2 in sadaqah, in 10 years you give 2,000 because you're more financially able, but that $2 actually got you more reward than that $2,000. Or two different people. One person gives $2, and because of his or her intention or the specific place that they chose to give, they get more reward than somebody giving $2,000. So make your intention, make it consistent. And so every day you want to try to give out something. So here's another goal for Ramadan. Every day I want to give out something, even if it's a coin, 25 cents or whatever it might be. And I don't have an example. You should make a sadaqah box that you keep in your home. And if there's multiple members of the family, and this actually was a suggestion also on that panel by Sister Layla Faqira, she said she gets a sadaqah box for each of her children. It has each of your children. And if you're a parent and you want to make it into a craft, you know, they can do a craft and decorate it and so forth. And so each child takes some of their money that they have. And every night, you know, it could, again, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. It could be 50 cents. It could be 25 cents. It could be $1, whatever it might be. But the point is to give it and to give it consistently. And you can give it anytime during the day. But some of the scholars that I studied with in West Africa and Mauritania said it would actually be better to give it at nighttime. And the reason why they said it would be better to give it at nighttime is because of possibly giving it on Laylatul Qadr, right? Laylatul Qadr, we don't know when it is. It could be in the last 10 nights. It could be in the last odd nights of the last 10 nights. But it also could be anywhere in the month. And there's some opinions that Laylatul Qadr actually changes from year to year. We don't know what night it's going to be. So because we don't know, but we're pretty sure it's in Ramadan, and we're even more certain that it's in the last 10 nights, and we're even more certain because of the hadith that indicated that it's in the odd nights. But ultimately, Allahu A'lam, God knows best. So because of that, they said, well, just to be on the safe side and make sure that you get sadaqah, you give out charity on Laylatul Qadr, well, then give it out every night in Ramadan. And there was one scholar who he used to actually, he would give sadaqah out every night throughout the entire year just to make sure that he got it on Laylatul Qadr. So this is our goal for Ramadan. Give out sadaqah every day. Give it on a consistent basis, even if it's small. And give it out during the nighttime. And you can have that sadaqah box. A few weeks ago, I was on a panel, an interfaith panel, talking about charity. So there was a representative of the Christian faith. He happened to be Catholic. There was a representative of the Jewish faith. He was a rabbi, and then myself. And the interesting thing is, the rabbi mentioned that one of his teachers would actually carry 2 purses with her every day. And she called one of her purses her sadaqah purse. Sadaqah, TZ, sadaqah. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly from Hebrew, but it was a sadaqah purse. And I said, wow, subhanallah. And I actually told him, I said, you know, in my house, I tell the kids, here's our sadaqah box. And so they don't have to wait until we go to the masjid to give sadaqah, or a fundraiser to give sadaqah, or we see somebody who's needy and we give them charity. We can actually give charity throughout, anytime. Just put it in the sadaqah box, then we'll count it up, cash it, and send it to wherever it needs to go. Donate it online or drop it off at the masjid, wherever it might be. But in addition to that, I got an idea from him, which was his teacher said that she would carry a sadaqah purse. So what she would do, she would have her own purse with the needs, whatever she has in there, her wallet and whatever else she wants to put in her purse. But then she would have a separate purse filled with things that she could give to people as needed. So she would have extra socks in there and toothbrushes and food, maybe cash, whatever it might be, just so that she always has something on hand to be able to give in a time of need. Now, during this time of isolation, we're not walking around a lot, but this is actually a tradition that the Muslim scholars said, and I'm talking about a text from 1,000 years ago that I read, or maybe about more like 800 years ago. The Madkhal of Ibn al-Hajj, he said, every time you leave your house, you should have something in your pockets or with you that you can give out just in case you see somebody who's needy. And he said, the benefit of this is that even if you don't find somebody to give that to, you still get reward for the intention and for carrying it with you. So this is something we can do throughout the year, but let's try to do it as a habit during Ramadan. When we go out, let's have our sadaqah wallet or a sadaqah bag. And actually, after that, I had always been telling myself, I want to prepare some Ziploc bags with things with food and bars and other things that I can give, energy bars that I can give to a homeless person if I find them on the side of the street and they're asking for charity. I can just, reach over and grab the bag. And so after hearing the rabbi talk about the sadaqah purse, I said, okay, I'm going to do that. My kids put together the bags, and now just the other day, I saw a homeless man and I said, here you go. Here's the bag ready to go. So you're prepared ahead of time. So we can do that. So giving, so of course the fast, the prayer and the charity. Now I want to take one of the questions, which are there sunnah prayers that cannot be missed? This is a difference of opinion amongst the scholars, but according to the majority of scholars, if it's a sunnah prayer, there is no sin, there's no dhanb, there's no guna, there's nothing haram about leaving the sunnah prayer. There's one exception, and according to one of the scholars, and it's one of the great scholars of Islam, Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, he and his students and the scholars that follow his madhab believe that the witr prayer is, even though it's not one of the fard prayers, it's actually a sunnah, but at the level of wajib. It's a sunnah. It's considered something that is obligatory, so you should not leave it, and there is a sin for leaving it. Now, the majority of scholars say no, it's a sunnah, and technically you won't get a sin for leaving it, but we should not leave it, according to any opinion, because it's a sunnah. So sometimes you might hear people say, you advise them, oh, you should do this or we should this, and somebody said, well, it's just a sunnah. I want to draw something here in response to that, the idea of just a sunnah. So, well, maybe it might not show up on here. Imagine concentric circles. I'll just do this. So just imagine this. Right here in the middle, we have the fard. So I'll just put a F for fard. Is it coming up backwards? Yeah, it's reversed. And then I'll try to write it backwards. S for sunnah. And then we have the extra, like nafila, which it's a I got to write it backwards so that it shows properly on the screen. S for nafila. So you have the fard, you have the obligations, those things that you cannot leave. The sunnah, these are the things the Prophet ﷺ did on a regular basis. He never left them, but there was no, he told us, there's nothing that says it's an obligation that you have to do it. And then there's nafila, which are those types of worship that maybe he didn't specifically do, but it's great to do. So did the Prophet pray 36 rak'ahs in Taraweeh? No. Is it a nafila prayer that you can do? You can add more? Yeah, you can recite more Quran, you can give more sadaqah. It's a nafila. So it's an act of worship, but maybe not something done in the specific way that he did. And then over here you have the adab, the etiquettes. So you see these four levels: the fard, the sunnah, the nafila, and the adab. So the shaitan, and then actually within the fard, there's another one, I for iman, right there in the middle. Now the shaitan knows that he cannot come to the Muslims and just tell them, hey, stop being Muslim. And for somebody who's at least basic Muslim, he's not going to tell them don't do the fard. The person might say, hey, I don't pray, that's true, but I'm not going to say it's not fard. So what the shaitan does is he comes and he starts over here and he starts breaking down the barrier of the etiquettes, the adab. You know, don't you don't need to do that. That's not even a sunnah. Don't do that. And then once the person gets a hole in their defenses and their fortress, now he comes to the naf and is like, hey, take a rest, you know, give yourself a break. You need a break. And then he breaks down that. Then he gets to the level of the sunnah. And he says, hey, remember, it's just sunnah. It's not a fard. It's just sunnah. And so then he breaks down that line of defense. He's worse than the coronavirus, right? And this is our immune system. This is our iman system, but it's our iman immune system. And shaitan, just like coronavirus got those little horns, shaitan's got those little horns, and he's worse than the coronavirus, the shaitani virus. And then he comes to the fard, and then he's like, well, you know, it's fard, but you can make it up. You can make up that prayer. You can make up that fast. And then he breaks down that line of defense. And now he's got you used to leaving a adab, leaving a nafila, leaving a sunnah, leaving a fard. And then what's left? Leaving the iman. So as long as you keep those lines of defense up, you won't be affected by the shaitani virus. Okay, so that's an answer to the question of are there sunnah prayers that can be missed? Yes, technically they can be missed, but in totality of making sure that we want to follow the sunnah, it's another example that I give is I said, imagine a Muslim society where nobody says assalamu alaikum. Just think about that. That's the universal greeting. You go to a Muslim country that you don't speak their language, or you see another Muslim in another country, you're traveling, you're in Europe, you're in the Philippines, you're in South Africa, and you see another Muslim and they're like, assalamu alaikum. You know that feeling that you get, that connection, that reminder that you're part of the ummah? Well, imagine we didn't have that because everybody said, well, it's just sunnah. So just think of what our society would be like. So there's certain things that we want to preserve about that. Okay, so we want to give the sadaqah, we want to do the prayer. I want to end on this, and then I want to give some time to the questions. So please go ahead. I'm going to get to all of the questions. So type them in. I'm not going to end the stream until I answer those questions. The month of Ramadan is the month of the Quran. This is the month that Allah revealed. He honored not only the Muslims, not only the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He honored the entire creation with the Quran, with the revelation of the Quran. And to give you an idea of the magnitude of the Quran, there are some scholars who say that the angels can do dhikr of any type, but they cannot recite the Quran. Think about that. There's some angels, they'll do tasbih, they'll be praising Allah for thousands or millions of years, but they cannot recite the Quran. And Allahu A'lam, I mean, God knows best, but this is an opinion of one of the scholars. I read it in a book that was discussing angels, and it just blew me away. And he said, this is why when the angels hear a Muslim reciting Quran, they rush to listen to it because they can't recite the Quran themselves, so they want to listen to it. So think about that. You're honoring the angels when you recite Quran. And this is the month that the Quran was revealed in. So this is a month that we should be increasing all of the forms of building our relationship with the Quran. So that is with reciting it. Now, in reciting it, it could be in different ways. It could be in learning Tejweed. So if you have not taken a Tejweed course, try to do so in Ramadan. It's a great month to develop that skill. There's a lot of online classes, if you can't sign up for a class online, just look at YouTube videos, pick up a rule here and there. If you have a friend who's studying Tejweed, say, hey, can we read together? Can we build our relationship with the Quran through Tejweed? Because the better your Tejweed is within your capacity, and we're not talking about making your voice sound beautiful. No, we're talking about reciting the Quran with the proper rules, whether or not you sound like those famous Quran reciters. So learning through Tejweed, reciting the Quran with just reciting it. So that's learning Tajweed, and then now we pick up the Mus'haf, reciting the Quran. That's another way we build up a relationship with the Quran. Listening to the Quran, and I've heard a number of teachers mention this, that it's good to, everybody has a different, it's like in the story of Bani Israel, when after they crossed the Red Sea with Musa alayhi salam, with Moses. And then he struck his staff onto the mountainside 12 times. And from each striking, a spring came forth. And each of the 12 tribes of Israel, of Bani Israel, knew which spring to drink from. It's a metaphor that the scholar have mentioned that says each person knows what their mashrab is, what your spring is. So this is another thing that each one of us have to do. And Ramadan's a great month to figure out, what is my mashrab? What is the thing that I really love doing? Some people love doing humanitarian projects and sadaqah, collecting sadaqah, giving sadaqah, taking sadaqah. Well, if that's your mashrab, that's your spring that you're drinking from, focus on that and build that. Some people, it's in studying. Some people, it's in fasting. So you'll see them fast throughout the year. Some people, it's in tahajjud. So you'll see them always do tahajjud. Now, everybody should have a little bit from each one of those springs, but each one of us knows that there's a couple of those springs that we really shine in. So it's your potential and it's your desire coming together and working hard to really access that spring. The same thing happens with Quran reciters. Everybody has a different Quran reciter. Find that Quran reciter that you can just sit and reflect and deeply think about those ayahs. And don't worry that you're not understanding them cognitively, because the Quran can affect your heart and affect your soul, even if you don't understand what's being said. And I have a good friend of mine who's a poet. And before he became Muslim, he wanted to take his poetry to the level of music and make music his career. That never ended up happening. He became Muslim, and he took his skill of media and audiovisual and is serving the Muslims and Islam through that, recording lectures. And he actually taught me how to record lectures. May Allah bless him and bless his family. Harun Sellers, shout out to Harun. But one time when he was in the masjid, and he already became Muslim, he's already praying. He was in the masjid, and these are the days of the cassette tapes, where now many people haven't even seen a cassette tape. But somebody was selling the Quran recitation on cassette tapes. This is in the 90s, and he heard the Arabic Quran. It was the first time he ever heard Quran in Arabic. He rushed over there, bought the entire set, and started listening to them. And then there was one surah that he just kept on listening to over and over and over again. And he didn't know why. He didn't know why he was just attracted to that surah. Well, his friend, who had also converted to Islam but was studying Arabic as well, he took the cassette tape to him, and it was only written in Arabic. There was no English on it. And he said, Khalil, can you read for me or tell me what this is? Which surah is this? Now think for a minute. What surah do you think that would be? You can, if you're watching this and it's not live, you can pause it and try to guess. The surah was Surah Ash-Shu'ara, the surah of the poets. Subhanallah. What coincidence that this is a man who was a poet, wanted to take it to music, still writes poetry all the time, and is really a poet at heart, and hit the surah out of the entire Quran that he was attracted to, not even being able to read what the surah's name is on the cassette tape, was the surah of the poets. Allahu Akbar. And I've heard many, many stories of people who have become Muslim just by listening to the Quran. So the Quran can benefit your soul and purify your soul, even if you don't understand it. So listening to the Quran, find a reciter, quiet time, or even if you're out and about. I've gotten this question a couple of times. Even if you're out and about and you got your headphones on or your AirPods, whatever, and you're doing something else, it's okay. That's okay. That's not bad adab to listen to the Quran while you're doing something else, while you're cooking, while you're doing, gardening, yard work, whatever it might be, chores in the house. If you got chores and you just put on your headphones, type into the Quran and listen to the Quran. You have a different experience than if you sat down and thought and reflected. but both of them are mashrabs, both of them are springs that you can drink from. Another way to get closer to the Quran is to read it in your native language so that you can understand it. If you understand Arabic, read it in Arabic and then access the tafsir. So understanding that. Also, sometimes people ask a question, why didn't the Prophet ﷺ ever write a tafsir or have it dictated to his scribe? He could have easily got all of his scribes and said, okay, start writing. I'm going to explain the entire Quran. Why didn't he? Again, another question. Think about it. And if you're watching this once it's recorded, press pause and think about it. Why didn't the Prophet ﷺ go through the Quran ayah by ayah and explain every verse? Now, we find some ahadith, some sayings of his where he's explained specific verses. Why didn't he do that for the entire Quran? Think about that. The reason is because he was the tafsir of the Quran. His life, his entire life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was an explanation of the entire Quran. So to understand the Quran, understand him and his life. And if I have a copy of it, oh, it's downstairs. But to understand the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I had another friend of mine, he said one of his goals that he does in Ramadan is read one version of the seerah, and he's reading in English. He doesn't have access to the Arabic every Ramadan. So that's a beautiful goal. Every Ramadan, just pick one author, seerah in English, and read through it. So that's something else you can do. And when you're studying the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're understanding the Quran. So reading tafsir, studying the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, reciting Quran, listening to Quran, reciting the Quran in prayer, reciting the Quran in Taraweeh. And also what I would say too is, and I'll end on this, is do something where you can actually study the Quran and read it, even if it's not the entire thing, but you study it to get a deeper connection with the Quran, and remember that the Quran is a message to you. It's a message to you as an individual. It's a message to me and everybody else. It's not a historical book that was speaking only to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or only to the people that were in there. It's a message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to you. And the first time I heard this was from the brother, earlier I mentioned Shaykh Alauddin al-Bakri, but his brother Salahuddin al-Bakri was a very active member of the Bay Area community here. One, mashallah, may Allah preserve him and preserve his family. But he told me this, and he said he learned it from his brother, Shaykh Alauddin, who said, remember, the Quran is a message, is a letter to you. Now, when you change that mindset, when you say, I'm not reading a letter that Allah wrote, that he sent to other people. No, he sent this to me. Now, I want to read every single ayah as if he's speaking to me. Now, that makes the Quran, the personal relationship with the Quran, that much stronger. And then not only is the letter to you, because it's like if somebody sent you a letter and has a lot of things in there, and there's some points in there that I want you to do. I have an email, I have a few tasks. If you just read the letter, great. I'm glad you read the letter. Now I'm going to expect you to say, did you do those things that I mentioned in the letter? And so the same thing for the Quran. There are things in there for us to reflect on, for us to say, for us to do. Now, our question is, every time I lift my head up from reading the Quran or listening to the Quran, am I taking something away that I can implement into action? And I have a good friend, Dr. Ma'raj Muhyiddin. Do I have his book here on the shelf? I don't. He is the author of a book of seerah called Revelation. If you don't have it, I'd like to show you the cover. It's not up here. Ma'raj Muhyiddin, the book is called Revelation. Wonderful book of seerah about the seerah of the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we were talking earlier about the Quran, and he said it's like when you go to a meeting, a business meeting. If it's a great meeting and people have PowerPoints and they're quoting Thoreau and other people, and you walk away and you say, "Oh, great meeting." Nobody's doing anything based on what they learned in the meeting. He said, well, every time you go to the Quran, consider it a meeting. You're meeting when you read the Quran. When you walk away, you want to take some action items and work on them so that each time you're going up. So I'll end with those. I wanted already gone over the hour, so I want to finish up with with the questions. But remember the goal setting at the beginning of the day or the month in this case, or before the month, struggling with ourselves, but also adjusting the goals. So we might set some goals that are a little bit unrealistic, too high or too low. We want to be constantly reviewing those goals. So every day, take out a few minutes of the day in the beginning to set those goals. Remind yourself, take a piece of paper. There's a lot of Ramadan planners. There's actually one PDF. Maybe we'll put it in the description of this movie. But just look Ramadan planners, and it has some of the basic things like the dhikrs you should be doing, prayers you should be doing, and then has room for you to fill your own goals in. But even if you don't have one of those Ramadan planners, do whatever it is, write it down, and it'll help you in remembering that. There was one companion of the Prophet radiallahu anhu who came to the Prophet and he complained. He said, I hear your words, but I'm having trouble memorizing them. And he said, seek help with your right, meaning your right hand, be yaminik. And then he made the gesture of writing, meaning write it down. So writing down will help you. Write it down on a piece of paper, on the note function of your phone, on your computer, Google Doc, whatever it might be. Write those out. Review it at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day for your goals throughout the month. Okay, so now we're going to do a review of the questions. Question on fasting. Does smelling alcohol break the fast? No, it does not. As long as that smell wasn't so powerful that you can actually taste it in the mouth. Same thing happens with like perfumes that are very pungent, or oud. Be careful about burning incense, because that smoke, if it gets in there and you can feel it, especially if you can feel it at the back of your throat, will actually break the fast according to some of the scholars. So you want to be careful about smelling things, smelling the steam off the cooking pot, the steam from showers. You want to be careful about, you don't want to ingest, even through inhalation, anything, steam, smoke, or powerful smells. The same thing would apply to like Windex or cleaning items. If you get a big whiff of the cleaning thing, you can feel it. You're like, oh man, I can taste that. Well, if it gets to that point, the fast is broken. So you want to be careful with that. Are there sunnah prayers that cannot be missed? I discussed that earlier. If it's accidental and not your fault. So I'll suggest a quick review of the fiqh of fasting, especially to the rule, the school of thought that you follow. That would be a great preparation for Ramadan. And there's a lot of seminars, a lot of pre-recorded. So do a review of the fiqh of fasting. Salam from Puerto Rico. Wa alaikum assalam to Puerto Rico. I have a good friend there. May Allah bless you and bless your family. Okay, yeah, definitely, Nesli, if you could share the talk. And if you have any questions, and if anybody has any questions, please send me an email. My email is Rami, Rami at mcceastbay.org. You can also go to the website and find my email there. But yes, thank you, Nesli, for the salam. Thank you for sharing the talks, and for MCC. And I direct the youth program. So if you or any of the other youth in Puerto Rico have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and send me an email. What are your thoughts on morning and evening adhkar? Excellent question, Nesli, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. The morning and evening adhkar are wonderful, and it's another sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to do the adhkar, the morning and evening recitations that he would do. And this is also an important point. Thank you for asking the question about the adhkar, because I just ended on speaking about reciting the Quran and the importance of reciting the Quran. But the scholars, our scholars have said, recite Quran as much as you can, except at those times when the Prophet ﷺ had a specific dua that he would recite. At that point, it's more important to recite his dua. Excuse me. So, say, for example, you were reciting Quran and you're about to leave your house. Well, stop the Quranic recitation and recite the dua of leaving the house, or the opposite. Or you're reciting Quran and a strong wind comes. Well, recite the dua the Prophet ﷺ would say when a strong wind came, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of great books for the adhkar. There's the shortened versions. There's also an extensive version by Imam Nawawi, and it's been translated into English. It's called the Adhkar of Imam Nawawi. And he collected all the adhkar in any situation. And I would highly recommend you to get it in Arabic as a PDF if you can. There's a translation in English. If you just type in Adhkar Imam Nawawi, it will come up. Okay. Oh, Iman. Wa alaikum assalam. Iman from Puerto Rico. So again, the adhkar of the morning and the evening, they can be done in any fashion. There's some collections that actually collect them from all of the ahadith and they put them together in a specific wird, a specific format. But wherever you find them, put them together. And what I would suggest to build the habit is, sometimes you get the adhkar of morning, the dhikr is the remembrance of the morning and the evening. And if you read all of them, it might take you 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. And that might be hard to start as a regular routine. So what I would suggest is start out with 2 or 3 of the hadiths that the Prophet ﷺ would recite in the morning and in the evening, after Fajr prayer, after Subh Fajr prayer, and after Asr prayer. Just take a few extra minutes. We should be doing the adhkar, those dhikrs after every prayer. Well, the dhikrs of the morning and the evening, you can do a few after Fajr and a few after Asr. Start off with 2 or 3. Once you get regular in those and you've got those memorized and you're reciting it just like Fatiha, then add in another one and keep building on that. Dhikr is dhikr. So the question is, what is dhikr again? Dhikr literally means remembrance, a remembrance. And it's specifically used by in Arabic and in the Quran and in the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a form of remembrance where you're remembering Allah. So if, before you eat or drink, you say Bismillah in the name of God. That's a form of dhikr. When you begin the prayer, you say Allahu Akbar. God is greatest. God is greater. That's a form of dhikr. So that's what dhikr means. Again, if there's any questions, I will type my email right here into the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. This will be the last session of the coping with coronavirus sessions. This was the 5th session. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah bless you and bless your families, especially as we prepare for Ramadan. We will have programming at MCC. Throughout Ramadan, I will have a series of lectures. They will be pre-recorded. And because we also want to be recognize that people's days and nights as well, especially with the prayer and the breaking fast, is going to be packed. So there's going to be some pre-recorded lessons of myself and other teachers and from the MCC community. The dhikr of the morning that we can get. Well, there's the adhkar of Imam al-Nawawi. That's a long version. It has a lot of them, but if you look it up, but if you just type in dhikr of morning and evening, there's a lot of online versions that you can find. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah bless you and bless all of your families and bless you during this Ramadan and make this for you and for me and for all of the Muslims the best Ramadan ever. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, the success to be able to achieve that goal and the acceptance of whatever we're able to achieve after making sure that we struggle. And please keep us in your dua and keep the ummah and keep all of Bani Adam, all of the children of Adam, humanity, in your dua during this month of Ramadan. We know that there are physical precautions that we can take and things that we can do physically to protect ourselves and to heal and so forth and to boost our immune system, but there are also spiritual things that we can do to protect us on the spiritual level, and that's what we want to be focusing. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.